What kind, boy?
We got Channel 5 anti-ICE.
My family's from Mexico. I was born in Compton. I'm all for La Raza of Mexico. I would love to live in Mexico, but this is Mexico, so.
We built America.
It's been a while since I fucking checked
A
the
lot
Channel
of
5 video.
Our farm workers are immigrants.
See, you guys are foreigners. You actually don't know how it is.
Boy, I will never get these fucking PSCNs over here. I don't fucking look PSCNs, boy. I will never
Are
get this shit.
immigrants.
See, you guys are foreigners. You actually don't know how it is to have a taco de frijoles in the house. Nopales, mole, queso, right?
Yeah.
You don't know. You don't know that richness. You're like a foreigner, right? Are you? What ethnic are you?
White.
Oh, you are. Okay.
What are you?
Caucasian.
You're Caucasian?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool.
Even you, man, you know, being like, you're light-skinned, no, nothing racial or nothing, man, but we're all from where we're from, man.
I'm Mexicano.
Okay.
Yeah. People of the sun. See the people of the sun?
Yeah.
Yeah. You actually came and invade not you, but your ancestors, the Europeans.
Well, I don't know if the Irish did that, but I get what you're saying.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? But this is a continuous conversation. And the important thing is when you have a conversation like this, it's a debate. It's agree to disagree.
Chinga la migra. Donald Trump es un pendejo. You guys might hear these phrases once a month or maybe once a year, but here in Boyle Heights, you hear that shit every day. I'm right here at Mariachi Plaza in the historic barrio of Boyle Heights to do a couple interviews. With who, you might ask? The organizers of a big-ass rally to protest mass deportation, ICE raids, Trump's new executive orders, and so forth. We're gonna go talk to la gente that organized this event and figure out ¿qué onda? ¿Qué pasa? What the heck is going on?
ICE is terrorizing our communities, and they're trying to manufacture consent for a war with Mexico.
And these raids are not hyper-targeting criminals, they're hyper-targeting tax-paying community members. And right now, with all the people not working because they're scared to get deported.
There's a lot of people that don't want to come out. They're scared to come out. They're scared to die out here. They're scared to get taken from these streets. Some of us are never going to get taken from here, so we're willing to die for those voices that are lost. We're here to speak and do for those that can't. My name's not C backwards I can, and I do for those that can't. I can, so I will. And that's for everybody. If you can, do for those that can't.
Trump has confirmed he plans to address illegal immigration in the U.S. through a mass deportation program.
The stories of families being ripped apart, there's mothers that are being taken away from their children.
Sometimes you have to be careful just going to the street and getting ice cream.
This past week, a video went viral of a woman in El Monte who was violently arrested and detained by ICE in broad daylight. Her daughter has cancer, and she's undergoing chemo right now.
Mother does not have a criminal background, and she's the primary caretaker for her daughter.
She is currently going through chemo right now, unable to walk, and she feels afraid and alone.
They're being ripped apart from the rest of their family and their communities.
We're being told rhetoric that the idea is going to be that we'll create more jobs for Americans if we take away the jobs of immigrants. But these jobs are open to Americans. The immigrants are often the people that are taking low-paying jobs that are being exploited for things that Americans don't want to do. And the issue of job availability is not due to the immigrant community.
Many of these migrant workers come to the U.S. on temporary work.
Boy, motherfuckers come to America and work harder than they were always born in America, boy. On some real shit though, boy. Like,
visas.
motherfucker is so privileged to be born in that country.
She has picked tomatoes in the summer, getting paid for each bucket she picks, at times only making $200 a week.
Americans are being squeezed out of the labor force and their jobs are taken.
It's ironic that this billionaire agenda is wanting to deport immigrants when they're part of the reason for their success, the exploitation of the working class, especially immigrants.
An estimated 11 million people live in the US illegally, at constant risk of deportation, even while large parts of the economy depend on their low-paid labor.
Right, so for as long as
It ain't even that many people, boy. 11 million. How many people in the fucking in USA?
I can remember, immigrant labor has seen as quote-unquote unskilled labor, which doesn't exist, right? All labor is skilled. And because of that notion, right, that the people picking our fruit, the folks cleaning up our hotel room, the people literally cleaning up debris, are immigrant workers, there's this notion that their labor is unskilled, therefore should be underpaid.
And you know who's being hurt the most by millions of people pouring into our country? The black population and the Hispanic population.
It's easy to criminalize people without taking responsibility for why we have immigration and immigrants in the first place, which is
due to U.S. intervention and us intervening in the global south and forcing people to leave. People don't choose to come here lightly. They are forced to.
This country has fucked up the rest of the world and destroyed people's homelands and forced millions of people from the Congo to Latin America to flee their homelands and seek refuge in places like the U.S. And then they turn around and call them criminals and demonize immigrants.
We not cross the border crossed.
What is this Orwellian boy?
As they told Mexican territory, it's us territory. But Trump is crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy motherfucker, though.
Even right now in Mexico, I think by labeling cartels a terrorist organization, Trump is trying to manufacture consent for war with Mexico. And that's what they've done across Latin America.
2 weeks ago, I officially designated this gang, along with MS-13 and the bloodthirsty Mexican drug cartels, as foreign terrorist organizations.
La Familia Michoacana.
Drug
Background, what the fucking not intro?
cartels as foreign terrorist organizations.
La Familia Michoacana has terrorized areas outside of Mexico City for decades.
How do you feel about the designation of cartels as terrorist organizations?
I would say that when it comes to cartels, even that alone and those questions, it's shifting the narrative to that the immigrant community that are coming to the United States are all cartel-based or are all dangerous.
Well, I'm not talking about migrants doing crime. I'm talking about criminal organizations taking advantage of the smuggling routes into the U.S., not the migrants themselves. A lot of them are taking advantage of migrants who are passing through Mexico.
The criminals stamped their skin to signal they had paid. The kids were marked too.
And as they wait, many are being kidnapped
Boy.
by smugglers
That one doesn't look older than 5, boy. That all got a fucking tastic.
connected to criminal organizations and held in stash houses where they are tortured until a family member in the U.S. or back in their home country pays a ransom fee for their release.
Do you feel like that's the responsibility of the Mexican government to root out that corruption in some of the border states, or should it be something that America does?
I think that that when we're fighting for improved immigration reform and to create paths to citizenship, that the discussion has to be separate from identifying the solutions to manage the infiltration of crime within our country.
The president of Mexico, Claudia Sheinbaum, has done a really good job by debunking a lot of the rumors of, the cartels and the criminal organizations.
Mexico's President Claudia Sheinbaum responded firmly, stating that Mexico would never accept any interventionist actions emphasizing collaboration without subordination.
247 homicide victims in the first 2 weeks of Sheinbaum's administration.
It's a narrative, right? It's a narrative that paints immigrants as criminals. That's what the Trump administration is going to continue.
How fucking tall is she, boy?
Doing because it helps make the community afraid, make working class people afraid, so that there's an easier transfer of wealth to the billionaire class. Because the reality is that America, we are the consumers, so anything that comes here, whether it's guns, drugs, we are essentially allowing them and making it a demand.
It's not the people of Mexico who are using fentanyl or at higher degrees, right? It's not the people of Mexico who are consuming these drugs. It's the people in the United States who are the main consumers.
Kids as young as 11 years old recruited by the cartels to smuggle drugs.
Federal agents say that they have freed nearly 100 migrants into Mexico who were being held against their will after a weeks-long human trafficking sting.
Sure, I mean, I'm not saying I agree with them and their violence, but I feel like they are pushed into a corner of survival. And when you're pushed into survival mode, people do what they have to do to survive.
It's a 40-millimeter grenade launcher.
It's a lack of opportunity that disallows them to get certifications or to get certain education, things of that sort.
And when we talk about violence,
9 bodies hanging from a bridge in Mexico City.
I think it's important to also remember that just because they may inflict physical violence, like the U.S. commits a lot of violence in other ways to us and to other countries, like whether it's denying people health care or,
All right, now I'm going to introduce a segment for the first time that's called By Passion Separate. Our time migrants come from around race posed by That was made by passionate Americans, and follow them all the way to the source to get the real scoop. That what you just heard was the undermining of the very real danger and threat posed by the Mexican drug cartels, and the unfortunate grouping of that assessment as being part and parcel of Trump's anti-migrant sentiment.
It's a narrative, right? It's a narrative that paints immigrants as criminals.
I believe that it's this unnecessary intersectionality imposed by reactionaries of all kinds that most potently obscures issues to the point of shutting down the conversation. Because the underlying message in that is that if you're critical of the actions of the drug cartels, you're playing into the anti-migrant sentiment, which in turn makes you racist. But thankfully, I don't care about that, so I'd like to explain a few things. The cartels and the migrants are two separate entities. Migrants come from around the world to find work and safety in the US. The cartels are billion-dollar corporations that pump drugs into the US. However, 95% of the time, migrants pass through Mexico on the way here, which gave the cartel a huge new business opportunity.
They've actually expanded. They're into kidnapping, extortion, weapons smuggling, and the scariest of all, human smuggling.
Which accounts for a bulk of the revenue.
50,000 people times $8,000 a head is $400 million.
Following the motto, no one crosses without paying, the cartel often stages mass kidnappings of babies from their migrant mothers to demand huge ransoms.
Me llegaron casi a secuestrar a mi hija, pero pues con la bendición de Dios, el Señor, no sé, se le abrió el corazón y me la dio.
According to Ruben Garcia, the director of a shelter called the Annunciation House in El Paso, this often happens even after they've already crossed.
We just received a mom from Guatemala. She came up with her 4-year-old daughter with a smuggler in Juarez. The smuggler sold her to another smuggler, and that smuggler took her 4-year-old daughter and then took mom to where the metal fence is. You'll get your daughter once you're on the other side. Here's a cell phone. It was a way to get a lot more money. When she got to Border Patrol, the Central Processing Center, there they took her to get a medical checkup, and she was able to get one of the officers to listen to her, who then called Homeland Security investigation. She had a cousin in Florida that had helped her with some of the money. They set up the meeting in Las Cruces, and there they showed up, they made the arrest, they had the 4-year-old, they also had a 6-week-old baby.
You know, people do what they have to do to survive, and
we need to look at our role.
Additionally, Americans are not solely to blame for the mass flooding of our streets with fentanyl. It's fair to say that American pharmaceutical companies like Purdue Pharma, which is founded by the Sackler family, are responsible for helping to create a generation of Oxycontin and Percocet addicts who later would create a demand for cheap synthetic opiates that was met by the cartel. But in 2023, the Sinaloa cartel, a corporation, did work directly with Hanhong Pharmaceutical Technology, a Chinese research corporation, to create, or invent rather, a powerful line of mass-produced fentanyl pills called Blues. Here was the scene on the streets of Albuquerque, New Mexico in 2023, months after the Blues hit.
Overnight, it seemed like the Blues came in, and I just started seeing everybody that I knew that was getting high on just the heroin, go to the pills.
American motherfuckers be going crazy for seeing vapes and shit. Boy, you all got fentanyl you need to worry about, boy. You're worried about the wrong things.
Like their whole lifestyle changed.
10 years ago, the flavor of the month was heroin, right? Right now, that's all shifted into fentanyl. You know, the junkie's dream. Give me the strongest stuff is heroin, right? Right now, that's all shifted into fentanyl. You know, the junkie's dream. Give me the strongest stuff possible. Take me to the edge of death.
The fentanyl is just really fucked people up. You know what I mean? It's taken a lot of people's lives. I mean, it's almost taken my life a few times. You know what I mean?
The synthetic market is getting bigger, and it's not going to stop. They have figured out, like, hey, if we can manufacture fentanyl in these little pills and sell it for $2 a hit, what else can we manufacture into a little dose and sell it super cheap?
In that year alone, 2023, 74,900 people died from fentanyl-related overdose deaths by a drug that was maliciously packaged, marketed, invented, and imported by the cartels. I think that terrorism in general is a strange label to slap on a group whose primary goal is to make money, but it's definitely not that far off. And the reason I'm going so in-depth is because when people are discussing an issue that doesn't immediately concern them and their safety, it's easy to pivot the conversation toward meta talking points about the causes of addiction and the implications of US intervention in Latin America. But this issue really matters, especially for the people of Mexico, not Los Angeles, whose lives have been torn apart by cartel violence. Here are some different reactions to Trump's new executive order, this time from Mexicans who are currently living in the epicenter of that kind of cartel violence, the infamous but beautiful border town of Ciudad Juárez. ¿Qué piensas sobre eso?
Creo que está bien la clasificación porque pues son personas que hacen daño y que no se tientan mucho el corazón con algunas personas y estaría bien el título que les...
Conocer la verdad. Mataron mucha gente, niños, señoritas, violaban y todo. La gente todo llorando, la pobreza. Usted puede vender taquitos y le cobraban. Y si no daban la semana el dinero, lo mataban. ¿Qué es eso? Ahora hay puras drogas sintéticas malas. ¿Por qué andan tantos jóvenes perdidos? Y ustedes como cronistas deben de echarle ganas. No oculten nada, se lo digo con respeto. Sí. ¿Y sabe qué? Le voy a decir una cosa. Yo le pido a Dios por ustedes para que Dios los proteja. Porque ustedes andan en el peligro. En Juárez tuvo los Z, con el Salvatrucha. Con todo respeto a todos los emigrantes. Ahí se quemaron 40, aquí bajando 40 emigrantes. ¿Sí supo?
Well, nearly 40 people killed in a fire that broke out at a migrant shelter along the southern border in Ciudad Juárez, Mexico.
As a personal eyewitness, the man goes on to suggest that the tragic death...
cartels they're not attacking like a singular person, boy. They just wanna cause that. They just wanna fucking make money, boy. They don't give a fuck who, boy.
Of the 40 migrants across the bridge was not due to an act of protest gone wrong, but actually because a group of mostly Venezuelans refused to pay the cartel tax, and that humanitarian groups helped to engineer a cover-up out of fear.
Quedaron callados. ¿Por qué? Porque no les conviene. Fueron 40 vidas. A mí nadie me lo contó, yo lo vi.
El Paso County Judge Ricardo Samaniego saying migrants are desperate and immigration policies need to change.
Yo voy siguiendo Bukele. ¿Sabe quién es Bukele, verdad? Sí. Ese presidente ha hecho muchas cosas en nombre de Dios.
He said that his favorite politician was Nayib Bukele, the current president of El Salvador, who created a mega prison called the CCOT, or the Terrorism Confinement Center, to indefinitely detain the members of two gangs, MS-13 and 18th Street. Two gangs that began and continued to exist in the streets of LA, but took hold in El Salvador in the 80s after Reagan's deportations.
Is it possible to get a tattoo like this if you're not a gang member?
No, you gotta kill.
You gotta kill to get those tattoos.
Because 14,000 people are being held in CCOT without trial, Bukele has been under fire for human rights violations. Many CCOT inmates say they were unfairly targeted and profiled. However, this year, El Salvador is no joke 20 times safer than it was 5 years ago, and currently has the lowest crime rate in Latin America, which is something that many Mexicans admire.
Nayib Bukele incluso está haciendo muchas cosas buenas en El Salvador. El Salvador ya no es el mismo de antes, El Salvador está muy bien ahora.
Ahora Bukele lo están criticando muchos cronistas, porque hay que los derechos humanos. Sí, y cuando ellos andan matando a la gente, es que por eso le digo, joven.
¿Piensas que necesitamos una cárcel para las bandidas en México como Bukele?
¿Por qué no? Si esas personas no tienen provecho. Yo he sabido, yo soy seguidor de todos los programas especiales que hay en YouTube. Y ahí los entrevistan. No, yo maté 5, 6, 7, los violé y tantas cosas. ¿Qué pasó? ¿A eso venimos al mundo? No, a eso no venimos.
By the way, the interviews that you just saw are from our upcoming episode, Mass Deportations, our first ever multinational closer look special that examines the current situation from both sides of the border.
Hey chicos, esto es Canal 5 con Josué C. y...
This is Andrew, you're watching Channel 5. If you want to check out an extended and complete version of that episode, go to our Patreon, www.patreon.com/channel5. Okay, let's head back to the anti-ICE rally in LA.
So do you feel like the first thing that we should do is kind of make the path to citizenship easier on a large scale?
In a way, yes. I feel that we have to look at who is applying for citizenship, complete thorough background checks, look at what they've been contributing to society, which more than often is just contributing to the commerce in society. And as far as border control and trying to control the infiltration of crime, I don't think that anybody is shutting down that discussion or wants the infiltration of illegal drugs.
Here's the thing: if there was a safer way, a more humane way, and a way that abided by international human laws for immigrants to cross, for asylum seekers to cross, there would be no need for the cartel to do that, right? They are definitely taking advantage of the fact that people have to go through extreme and risky ways of getting here because there is no other way. right? So if we want to support and protect immigrants right now that are literally stuck at the border, right? Because we've been cutting back our asylum system so much, we need to make the process more humane.
Thousands are gathering along the National Mall. They're calling for action from Congress and the White House on immigration reform.
So the last time we had an immigration reform policy was under Reagan, and it was a blanket amnesty.
I believe in the idea of amnesty for those who have put down roots and who have lived here, even though some time back they may have entered illegally.
Reagan granted amnesty to immigrants, right? And what it said is like, okay, if you've been here XYZ this long, here's the process. You'll become a citizen, right? We're gonna grant you amnesty. There hasn't been a policy change like that in the immigration law since then, right? And you mentioned asylum, right? The current asylum process is extremely difficult. And unfortunately, for most families that do file their asylum claim, they will be denied. And these are folks who are literally fleeing persecution, fleeing war, fleeing.
Going back to Reagan too, he loved asylum because he had this policy, if you remember, called wet foot, dry foot for Cubans, because obviously our enemies are the communists. So he's like, if you're a Cuban and you want to defect to Florida, if you can get here by any means necessary, the moment that your foot touches sand, you're a U.S. citizen. No paperwork, they just give you a passport, like welcome in. And so it's interesting to see some of these conservative policies now backfiring to where they're claiming it's like a liberal policy.
All right, what's up, Channel 5 watchers? As ICE, a government agency with a long history of controversy, claims to be ramping up their deportation operations, it's easy to see how quickly a climate of both fear and panic or celebration and victory can take over people's minds as politicians and their loyal mainstream news outlets fight for your attention by trying to shape your perception of things based upon salacious and sometimes manufactured narratives. It can be very hard to find the truth. That's why we here at Channel 5 remain committed to our mission of bringing you raw, unfiltered coverage of news events as they unfold on the ground with just enough context to tell you what you need to know. But even for us, it's hard to sift through the media machine's propaganda to find the truth. But you know what helps? A little service we use called Ground News. A dope ass killers being a center and the right. They also get yourself stuck in that goddamn information associated with service. It's on full using the link plan, reporting back to the source.
For the longest was seen as that inalienable human right that we all have globally. Right? So if folks are out there, you know, I think The Donut King, I don't know if you've seen The Donut King, is a really great documentary about in the past, we even supported asylum seekers in creating businesses. We supported them in like relocating, right, and thriving. So there's been instances in the United States where we have supported asylum seekers and where there's, and where it was like, you know, politicians that were supporting and pushing for more asylum systems and processes.
I think one of the problems too is it used to be that if you wanted to seek asylum, you had to wait in Mexico and you'd have an appointment with a U.S. Customs official who would give you an appointment, give you a temporary residence card, and you'd get in. Well, Biden changed it to where if you hopped the border, you would seek out a Border Patrol agent, and then you would be transferred to a shelter and then given an appointment in 4 years. So basically, it's bad for the migrants. It's bad for the government. It's a bad situation. And I don't think it has to do with left or right. It's just migrant rights, period.
Yeah, and that's where I agree with you because, like I said, both political parties have used immigrants and migrants as a scapegoat, right? They've used asylum seekers as scapegoats, and they haven't created a process that center humanity. Like when you look at folks seeking asylum, and I think one of the things Trump said his first administration, you know, when he was getting called out on putting kids in cages, one of the things he said was like, well, who built the cages, Joe?
Who built the cages, Joe?
Let's talk about
who built the cages, Joe.
You know, and it was the Biden administration, right?
En el tiempo que está el señor Trump ahorita, está deportando menos que el otro pasado. En el tiempo que está, comparan del tiempo que estaba Biden cuando empezó su presidencia y con deportado menos personas.
La diferencia es, Trump está en las noticias, dijeron cosas enojadas sobre los migrantes, pero Biden y Obama no dicen nada, pero hacen la misma cosa.
Correcto.
They are two sides of the same coin, that it's the same enemy, and the target is to regress society.
Definitely, like back to a pre-immigration state.
Yes, towards white supremacy.
And I think that's why it's important for anyone who supports immigrants and also immigrants ourselves is that no matter who's in office, we need to continue to fight for our rights. Because we know that no matter who's in office, we're going to be attacked. And we're going to be seen as the enemy and be pushed as the enemy.
Channel 5 Live worldwide, Hollywood and Vine. Fuck the authority, Channel 5 News. Channel 55. We don't fuck with custers. And 5 is the best number.
Hey, shout out to fucking Andrew, boy. 5